You know, it's pretty safe to say that a lot of people go to the movies to escape from reality. What they saw last night in Colorado really flies in the face of that. Dr. Leav is back now to discuss how this can affect our attitudes about something as simple as going to a theater. Now, we know there were kids in the audience there last night, and this is the kind of movie that you see a lot of young adults go to. How do you address this with them? How do you explain it to them?
Well, the situation is a very petrifying experience for anybody, whether you're old or young. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of adults, a lot of children will stay away from the movie theaters for a long time to come, just because of the anxiety and the fear associated with that. But I think it really helps to have a conversation about what these children, what these adults are thinking and feeling as they went through those experiences. Now, there is a possibility that some of these individuals have been traumatized by it, and they may have developed what's called PTSD, or post-traumatic stress disorder.
Do you mean the people who actually were in the theater or first responders, or do you mean people who may be seeing it on television? I
would say both. You know, of course, there's a higher likelihood if you were inside the theater during the shooting, but there's also a possibility that family members and friends and us out here can still experience PTSD as a result of hearing about it and seeing the sights and sounds of what happened. And so when that happens, I think it really requires us to process these emotions, to process these thoughts, whether in a family setting or in a support group setting, a church setting perhaps, or maybe, you know, seeking professional help from a therapist.
How do you explain, though, to maybe an 8 or a 10-year-old who perhaps is seeing this news on television that, you know, cartoons are okay, I'm going to take you to the theater, it will be fine. I mean, how do you put it into perspective that this was an isolated incident? That's hard for an 8 or a 10-year-old to process.
Yeah, and you know what? It's going to take time for that 8-year-old to process this experience. I mean, I won't blame them if they will never go to a movie theater until they're 15. You know, it's going to take some time to process.
But you shouldn't push them as a parent.
Exactly. Give them some time to kind of grieve over it. You know, give them time to kind of express, you know, their fears and their anxiety about going to the movie theater versus forcing them, hey, this is a cartoon, it's okay. So I think you really should allow some space and some time to kind of process these emotions, whether you're an 8-year-old or whether you're an adult who experienced it.
We saw the news conference with the police chief in Aurora, and he was talking about some of his officers when they arrived on scene. I mean, they triaged people at the scene, but some of the officers, you know, were just overwhelmed by the sheer numbers. This is a small town just outside of Denver. They put the trauma victims in their cars and took them to the hospital. How did they cope with what they saw and what they witnessed? I mean, even the police chief had a catch in his throat when he was talking about this.
Sure. You know, there's really no particular way to cope with the situation. I think we all have our own unique style of coping with it. You know, some like to listen to music, some like to be on their own, some like to talk to others. And so I would say just go with what works best for you, you know. But I think the fact of the matter is it will take some time to kind of examine what just happened, you know. And there's a high likelihood that these individuals will be stuck with these images for a very long time. And so be patient with yourself. Allow yourself time and space to kind of grieve over it, to cry over it. And it's okay to kind of, you know, feel all these emotions, you know.
If you're a parent, and obviously your child knows about this, what are the warning signs for PTSD? And what's the youngest you ever see that?
Well, it's very possible to have PTSD even at a young age, such as 4 or 5 years old. And usually some of the symptoms would be, you know, feeling intense fear or anxiety as if you're reliving those moments. And so, for example, in the next few weeks, if you have some children who were in the theater and they're kind of just really anxious all of a sudden, and they're saying, you know, oh, I see these things that happened in the theater that night, you know, and these memories are coming back to them, you know, it's very possible that they've been traumatized and they'll need some time to process that.
What if you decide as a family you're going to go see a movie in a couple of weeks, but you can't understand why your young child doesn't necessarily want to go? Should you drag them along as a family outing?
I would say be very patient and ask the child why are they feeling very hesitant to attend the movie. And, you know, if they say things like, oh, I'm getting flashbacks, I'm getting nightmares, I feel very anxious for no particular reason.
And you can get that just from watching the coverage on television, right?
Yes, it is possible to experience those things just from television.
The youngest age you should allow someone to watch coverage like this, you think?
Well, I would say starting in their teens, you know, would be the youngest. Just because at a very young age, it's really hard for a child to kind of make sense of what's happening in the movie theaters. I mean, you don't want a child leaving the movie theater from a very violent movie thinking it's okay to punch people, it's okay to shoot people, you know, and that has happened because, you know, parents were not educating their kids on how to interpret these situations.
All right, Dr. Leav, thanks so much for spending some time with us tonight.